You're watching Adam the Bull on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. If you're not using the BetRivers app, what are you doing? I'm telling you, you got future odds, you got current odds, you got the NBA Finals going on tonight. Whatever you want to lay down a wager on, whatever parlay you want to do. My parlay just missed yesterday. I'm still ticked about that. They've got you covered. Check out the BetRivers app. Coming up on today's podcast, Adam Caplan, longtime NFL writer, reporter. He is going to join me. We'll talk about the Browns and other things in the NFL, maybe a little fantasy football as well. But right now we're going to start with the Guardians, who got a victory last night and a much-needed big game from Josh Naylor. Josh Naylor, who had been in a tremendous slump, but he's batting about $150 in the last month after the great start. But what was interesting is that he had 17 ribbies in the last 30 days, which, considering he's only batting $150 over that stretch, is pretty incredible. If you think about that, that puts you on pace for 100 ribbies in a season, batting $150, which is crazy. Plus, some of the advanced data was good on him. His exit velocities over the last week have been pretty good. I said yesterday on the UCSS that I thought he was about ready to break out of his slump, and at least for one day, it looks like I am correct. 2 for 5, a homer, a bomb to right field that increased the 3-2 lead to 4-2. And he knocked in 3 runs in the game. Bo Naylor had a RBI double as well, and the Guardians win by a final of 5-3, winning the first of a 2-game series in Cincinnati. The Guardians have dominated this series in recent years. Got a little interesting in the ninth. Emmanuel Clase gave up a couple of hits. The second one that brought in the run was a bloop, and then he hit a batter right in the head on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, which was scary. It was scary when that happened. Fortunately, the batter was okay. A soft line drive to end it. So I wouldn't say they hit around Clase, but they made it interesting against him, which hasn't happened very often. But in the end, what does happen often is Emmanuel Clase, this year it's been pretty much every time, gets the job done, seals the deal, and the Guardians win it by a score of 5-3. And they improve to a season-high 21 games over 500. Guardians are 13 over at home, 8 over now on the road, 43-22 for a .662 winning percentage, 4th best in Major League Baseball behind the Phillies, the Yankees, and the Orioles. They increased their lead. Kansas City loses yesterday, and they had a really weird game. They lost to the Yankees 10-1 yesterday. So it's been nice for the Guardians competitors to play in the Yankees, because the Yankees have dominated the Twins, and now the Yankees have beaten the Royals 2 times in a row. It's very rare to be rooting for the Yankees, but that's exactly what we're doing right now. Yankees will go for the sweep of the Royals tonight. So the Royals lose again. Minnesota also lost. They lost to Colorado. Our old buddy Cal Quantrill pitched 6 shutout innings in that one. And by the way, he's pitched great for Colorado and could be a target for the Guardians if they want to go back in that direction. I didn't think much. I'll be honest. I didn't think much of Cal Quantrill, and I don't know what his long-term prospects are, but he's been tremendous for Colorado. He's got a .330 ERA for the Rockies and an ERA under 3 in his last 40 innings pitched. He's been extremely good for Colorado. So that could be another guy. I mean, when you're looking at very few teams that are out of it right now, Cal Quantrill could be another possible guy that the Guardians could be looking for in terms of a trade. He's eaten innings. Now, getting back to the Guardians and starting pitchers, for Tristan McKenzie, it was a very interesting game. It was an extremely shaky first inning, and he got bailed out by Tyler Freeman. And Tyler Freeman has just been, he's been okay, decent at the plate. He's had some really good at-bats. Not been great, but he's been decent. He's had some big moments, some clutch moments. But he's been tremendous considering the lack of experience in the outfield. So Tristan McKenzie gives up a base hit to TJ Friedel. And then on a pickoff throw, it gets away. I think that was more Josh Naylor's fault than McKenzie, but all right. Now, he does a great job striking out Ellie De La Cruz. That was a great at-bat for him. Then Candelario doubles to make it 1-0. Now, the Reds could have really blown open this game in the first inning, potentially. Spencer Steer hits one deep to center. Tyler Freeman jumps, makes a catch at the wall. Now, I don't think that would have been a home run. It's close. I think it would have been a double, but he went up to catch it. I think it would have hit the top of the fence and been probably a double, maybe a triple, who knows? Certainly a run would have scored. The next batter, Jake Fraley, hit one even deeper to center. This one, I'm pretty sure, would have been gone. So Freeman maybe robbed 2 home runs in a row. It definitely was the second one was a homer. The first one, I think, would have been just short, but he robbed at least a double off the top of the wall, maybe a homer, and then he robbed the homer. Great job by Freeman. And we know McKenzie has been awful lately, and he's been giving up a ton of home runs. Well, he almost gives up 2 in the first inning. Freeman bails him out, so instead of giving up at least 4 runs that inning, he only gives up 1, and he really pitched pretty well after that until he got knocked out of the game. In the second inning, he walked the batter, but the ball didn't get out of the infield. Third inning, they didn't get the ball out of the infield again. Cincinnati did give up a double in the fourth, but had a strong inning there. 1, 2, 3 in the fifth. Then in the sixth, he walked De La Cruz, which is trouble because of his base running ability. He got a ground out, but then Spencer Steer, got a hard single past the diving Jose Ramirez to give up the run to make it 3-2. Tim Herron did a great job getting out of that jam, but it was progress for McKenzie because that first inning could have gone south on him in a hurry. And after Freeman bailed him out on those 2 plays, I think he only gave up 2 hits the rest of the way. So he pitched really well after that shaky first inning. So we'll see if he can make some progress off that start. All right, we're going to switch gears, talk some Browns, talk some football. When we come back next, we'll talk with Adam Caplan. That's coming up in the bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. All right, welcome back. It's the bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. And, it may be not even the summer yet, but that doesn't stop us from looking ahead to the NFL season because really, as Adam Caplan joins us, the longtime NFL writer and reporter, Adam, there's no longer an offseason really in the NFL. I mean, there's a couple, right now there's not much going on, but, it used to be there was a lot of offseason in the NFL. That no longer exists. And for guys like you especially and me, that's a great thing, isn't it?
Yeah, look, this is the last week of OTAs, and teams are off for 4 to 5 weeks, depending on when they report. But yeah, when I first started covering the league in 2000, offseason was longer, no question about it. Practices were longer. I mean, I was at an Eagles practice last week where it was an hour, but the players were only on the field for 50 minutes, about 50 minutes, that is, less than an hour. So yeah, it's changed, but this is what the players wanted coming out of the 11 CBA. That I'll never forget that one, hearing how little they wanted to practice. I was like, wow, that's something you hear every day from the player side, but that's what they wanted and that's what they got.
It almost seems like now we're to a point, good or bad. I mean, I guess it's the same for everybody. It depends on your philosophy as a coach. But to some degree, the beginning of the regular season is kind of like preseason mode on some level because guys are not as ready for the season, and the games are way more unpredictable, I feel like, early in the season between less practice off season and certainly less playing in the preseason.
Yeah, so fair? I remember Bill Polian, the Hall of Fame general manager, telling me when we worked at ESPN about how the tackling the first month or so of the season is not very good, and then it starts to get better because you kind of alluded to this, the first 3 to 4 weeks, and it's very warm, obviously out east, and then even out here in the East Coast, it's still in the 80s. Stamina is always conditioning is always a challenge, and because you're not practicing a lot in training camp, and most practices are no more than an hour and a half. We don't have 2-a-days anymore.
Right.
You're not doing a lot of things you normally would do or be able to do. So it does take time. In fact, the regular season is almost an extension of the preseason for the first couple weeks. And then the football, the level of play gets way better. You and I would agree on that, certainly, as they go along.
I do want to get to the AFC North, but you mentioned the Eagles, of course. I know you're around them quite a bit. And obviously their season completely cratered. It's about as ugly as it could get the second half of last season. If you're an Eagles fan right now, are you confident that they're back on track right now? I mean, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, so my partner and I, Jeff Mosher, we have a streaming company called Inside the Birds. And we've addressed the collapse, epic collapse, 6 out of 7. It was crazy.
Yeah.
They were 10-1 at one point, best record in the National Football League. Now, barely winning, where then you saw it start collapsing. They had a defense coordinator change in season. Just that you can't really blame it on injury. That was the odd thing. Like, you look at the Brown situation over the years. So I've covered that team pretty closely. They've had a lot of bad luck with injuries. You can go. Everybody knows if you really follow the Browns closely, you know the list of players. You know the list of quarterbacks also they've gone through. Yeah. But with Philly, it was just both sides of the football. It wasn't one side. A defensive collapse. Just mentally, there was adjustment to the scheme when Matt Patricia took over. Offensively, Jalen Hurts regressed a little bit. They just didn't throw it as well. Defenses play them a little differently. It was bad, and this is what happens sometimes, and it all snowballs. It's rarely one thing when you have a team that collapses like that. And by the way, the Jaguars went through that. Now the Jaguars removed pretty much all their defensive staff, but their offense also wasn't good enough. Fans think sometimes it's one thing. Usually it's not when a team collapses.
Yeah, that's fair. If it's just one thing, it probably wouldn't collapse as badly as it did. Mm-hmm. So, you mentioned the Browns there. Obviously, last season was a bizarre season. They won a ton of games in what I look at as an unsustainable way. All the quarterbacks they went through, and you look at their defense, it was otherworldly at home, and on the road they were pretty bad. It was, and there's a variety of reasons for it, who knows, but the biggest story, obviously, the Browns have a ton of talent, maybe as much talent as they've had on their roster in 30, 40 years. But at quarterback, we don't know. I mean, when the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson, I was on the radio at the time, live on the air, and I was going crazy. The Browns finally have a franchise quarterback, first time in forever. They've solved the problem. Well, 2 years later, they haven't solved the problem. Now, they're still hoping they have, but to this point, he's either been hurt, suspended, or not particularly good. Where do you stand when it comes to Deshaun Watson, now 3 years since his last great season?
Yeah, so Adam, the last time that he played well was the 2020 season. He was phenomenal. There was no way he was going to be the MVP because the team was terrible with the Texans. The defense was not competitive, but he was great. But the strangeness of the 21 season, where he really wouldn't practice, and then he'd be inactive game day, but on the roster. And then the trade in 22, the suspension. So he had to serve part of the suspension in season. And he looked terrible when he came back, hurt last season, multiple right shoulder injuries. And talking to the Browns, I mean, they seem pretty optimistic he's going to be good to go for the season, and they'll see how much he can do in training camp. But, man, when you miss a chunk of talking to quarterbacks over the years, it's really hard when you're not getting those important reps in the offseason program. And I know they signed Jameis Winston and Snoop Huntley for depth, and you mentioned it. I mean, when you go through all those quarterbacks, you can't have enough depth at quarterback based on the way this position gets beaten up. But he hasn't played competent football since 2020. So you're right. I don't know what to expect around him. Look, they attacked the running back position pretty significantly with Deontay Foreman, who, when healthy, he's shown to be a capable back who would handle a lot of carries. We know they have a good offensive line. They made the trade up for Judy. So you're right. They're loaded on offense. It just comes down to, can Watson get them together? No. Can he get it together? I'm usually pretty definitive when I speak, but I don't know what to expect with this guy because it is his right throwing shoulder. I don't know what to expect from him because he hasn't played good football in years, and I don't know how much he'll work in training camp. Hopefully a lot. We'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because he hasn't played. Yeah, I mean, it's just I think the rust has been a lot worse. There's got to be some mental issues there, some confidence, some hurdles to get over. It's crazy. When you look at this division, I mean, on paper, this division is, I would say, by far the best in the NFL. I think you could make an argument. I know, maybe not. I look at this division, I say, they could finish in any order. I know it's less likely that the Steelers win the division, maybe, but I don't think it's impossible. And I think any team, including the Ravens, could finish last because last could be 9 or 10 wins. I mean, that's how good this division is. Do you see it that way too, or no?
Yeah, the odds makers have Baltimore as the favorite. I would agree with that. The Bengals, I'm surprised that their win total is as high as it is. It's either 10.5 or 11. It depends, depending on which book you look at. The Browns are going to be right there, but again, you just don't know about Watson. That's a huge situation. Then with Pittsburgh, talking to them, look, they feel a lot better about their quarterback position.
Sure.
We could talk all we want about Russell Wilson's not the same player. That's not even debatable. He's clearly not what he once was, but he still had 26 touchdowns last season before he got benched. He is an upgrade over what they had. They're pretty good at everywhere else. A little bit depth at corner for them is a little bit questionable, but they're going to be very good. You're right. It is definitely the best division. You could go through the 8 divisions. Okay, that's a below 500 team. That's a below 500 team. It's the only division in the National Football League where you could say, no, there was not a team under 500 in that division.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the schedule makers, there's not a lot of division games early. There usually is. This year it's not. The Browns, in fact, don't play a road division game till, I think, week 13, which is crazy. And I don't think they play a division game at all until at least week 7. I can't remember now off the top of my head, but it's going to be fascinating how the season plays out. You mentioned Cincinnati and their win total. You know, Deshaun Watson's missed a lot of time due to injury, but Joe Burrow has missed a lot of time due to injury. He hasn't been healthy for a training camp. You know, the first year was COVID, and since then he's been unhealthy every year. I think the Bengals have to be at least a little concerned. Now, unlike Watson, when Burrow's been on the field, he's played great. But still, he's had a ton of injuries in recent years. How concerned do you think they are?
Well, they're taking it easy with him. They want to make sure that he's able to throw and everything. They're not overwork. They didn't overwork him in the offseason program. And then the other thing is they got these contractual issues with Higgins.
Yep.
And Trey Hendrickson. You don't want that going on. So they got to deal with that kind of distraction.
Yeah.
I give him credit. They found Jake Browning. Like, Jake Browning had been a true journeyman quarterback. And I was surprised when he went in. He did a really nice job. So they found somebody. But yeah, Burrow, they feel very confident will be back to normal for the regular season. And it's not like it was an ACL injury like you had before him. And it's not a knee injury, something like that. But when you're talking about having to throw with the injury that he had, you're always concerned about that. But yeah, and by the way, with the Bengals, I know they think that it's funny. We mentioned the odds makers giving them credit. Sometimes they feel like they're not given enough credit for what they've been able to accomplish with this coaching staff over the years, because they've had to overcome a lot of stuff. Obviously, a lot of losing.
Yeah,
and have to turn their program around. They have a winning program. It's just they have not advanced very far in the playoffs. That's something that obviously, over a series of years they haven't. But Zach Taylor, who was much maligned when he got the job, it was kind of a surprise. He's worked his way through a tough beginning, and they're certainly a perennial playoff team. But to me, I'd rather have the Browns roster, so the Bengals fans probably don't want to hear that.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I mean, obviously, you'd rather have Burrow than Watson.
Exactly.
But the rest of the roster, the Browns is better. I mean, I don't know that it's head and shoulders better, but it's better. I don't think there's much doubt about it. The Bengals, they have their issues. There's no doubt. The Ravens defensively, they lost some key guys from a defense that was very good. How concerned would you be about that?
Well, also, the big one is their defense coordinator is now the head coach of the Seahawks.
True. Yeah.
Zach Orr, who's only 31 years old, youngest coordinator of any position, or whether it's offense, defense, or special teams. And Zach, I remember, was a football player before he suffered his career-ending injury. Pretty good football player, really smart guy. But this is a big deal. They're going to go through some changes at cornerback. But the key here is, I've always said, play calling's an art. You got to kind of learn it, and it's not going to be easy. This is a transition. I'm interested to see how he sees this defensive scheme. They're not going to change much. It's always going to be a 34 front. But how they play coverage, what the disguise looks. Because, man, Mike McDonald ran so many different things post-snap. And he, by the way, he's the guy who got Kyle Hamilton, who did not have a good rookie season, to break out last year. And that probably helped him get that head coaching job, because Hamilton now looks like he's going to be a star. And then, look, the offense, this is the second year with Todd Monken as their offense coordinator. They're going to go through some offensive line changes, and the big one is at running back with Derrick Henry, who they tried to trade for at the trade deadline. To be honest with you, those of us who were on that story, I thought it was going to happen, and I don't know if it was a cap issue, but they got him. They got their man. Yeah. And this is fascinating to watch Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, because Jackson runs the ball a lot, but will he run less? You would think so.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting storyline.
Adam, let's wrap it up with two Browns questions. Number one,
Sure.
JOK. This guy was drafted when Browns first drafted him. There was maybe some confusion as to exactly what to do with him. His rookie year, he was okay. His second year, he was terrible. And then last year, he was one of the best linebackers in the NFL. What's the reality of JOK? Did the Browns find something now with Jim Schwartz and he's going to be a special player going forward? Or are you not quite buying it?
They did. Yeah, I thought, and Jason Tarver's the linebackers coach is really good.
Yeah.
Who's also been defense coordinator in the NFL. And just sometimes it depends who's calling the defense. And sometimes they just use them differently. He definitely is a very unique player. He saw it. In fact, if he could continue on this trek here, if you look at Andrew Berry's 4 drafts, it has it's actually 5 if you count this one. But he's got a chance to be one of the top guys because you talked about his breakout season. Now you want to build on that.
Yep. And
don't discount Jordan Hicks, who had one of his best years of his career. Someone in personnel with another team told me. He was fantastic with the Vikings, and it could have been the Brian Flores scheme, whatever. You get a leader who's won a Super Bowl. He won it with the Eagles, really good football player. And they're a team that's going to play a lot of 2 linebackers anyway, not a lot of 3. So I think it'll be good. This is a good team. The Browns are going to be fun. I look forward to going to their training camp.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I agree with your assessment. This is a pretty stacked team. But also, we didn't mention Nick Chubb. That's another thing.
That's right.
And that's why they've got Ford, who did a great job. They got Foreman, who's could handle a lot of volume. This thing's set up pretty well by Andrew Berry and his staff.
Last thing, speaking of Nick Chubb, I was going to ask you, obviously I know you do a lot of stuff on the Fantasy Channel on Sirius.
Sure.
Nick Chubb, with the information you have right now, it's a tough question this early in the season, but where do you think he ends up going in terms of fantasy? Because even if he's healthy for, say, 10 games, he could be a big steal for somebody late, but I don't know how early you take him because you don't know what his status is.
Yeah, I would take. I don't know what his ADP is, which means for folks who don't play fantasy, his average draft position.
Yeah,
I would think I would think 8 to 10 because it's one of the worst knee injuries. I've covered this business 25 years. It's one of the worst that I've seen. We know Nick has had injury history, but it's been a great. Obviously, everybody loves him. Heart and soul of the football team. It's been a great Brown, no question about it. You root for him. It's going to be tough, and the good thing is they're not relying on him to be a major factor. They don't know what to expect. I could tell you from gathering information, people close to the situation don't want to make one commitment away of the other. They just because they have to get through it first and see how he does. But I know they love having him around. And I give Andrew Berry credit. He didn't just rest with Jerome Ford. He brings in Foreman. Naeem Hines, we'll see coming off the ACL. He's more of a returner. Yeah, you got Pierre Strong, John Kelly. I remember him from the Rams. He's got some juice in his legs. So they're ready to roll here, folks. Yeah. This is, as Adam said, and we'll leave you with this. The Browns could finish in first. It would not. Look, let's put it this way: if Watson plays above average football, they're going to be right there with the Ravens. If he's below average, I hate to put in these terms. Yeah, it'll be hard to win the division because you can't with that division. You set this up very well. You can't be an average team against that division. They're going to beat you because Pittsburgh's got a variety of ways of doing it. Baltimore, obviously, with the talent we just talked about. Cincinnati could score. They're going to have to throw. I don't know how good their defense is going to be. I mean, they want to throw anyway. Mm-hmm. But other than that, man, if Watson could just, I don't know, they'll play a whole season. If he could just play competent football, look out. This team's going to be there in the end.
It's going to be a wild season. Can't wait for both fantasy and the NFL. Adam, great stuff. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Great stuff with Adam Caplan. Good to chat with him about the Browns. He is very high on the Browns. He loves their roster as I do. And like the rest of us, if Deshaun Watson plays well, hey, there's no limit to how good the Browns can be. All right, that's it for me for today. Thanks to everybody for listening and watching. Please hit me with a thumbs up. Please hit the like. I appreciate it. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks to Adam Caplan for joining me. Thanks to Brian Monzo for producing. I'll be on tomorrow, of course, live, the live Thursday show, back to the normal time at 2 p.m. So please join me for that. We'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. See you, everybody.